The quiet hum of my Seattle apartment was shattered once again by the persistent buzzing of my phone, a sound I had come to dread but could never quite ignore. The name flashing insistently across the screen was one I had tried to forget, a reminder of a past I had fled yet could not escape. Gregory Keller. 5 calls in a single day. 5 attempts to pull me back into a world I thought I'd left behind for good. I stared at the screen, the vibration humming steadily against the cool marble countertop, echoing in the stillness of the room. Despite the urge gnawing at me, I made the conscious decision not to answer. Not yet. The call rolled into voicemail, and the silence that followed felt heavier than the buzzing itself. Moments later, an email notification appeared. A new message from my father, the subject line stark and unavoidable. Your sister's wedding. Final notice. My chest tightened as I hesitated before opening it, bracing for the familiar mixture of command and veiled threats that had characterized our relationship for as long as I could remember. Adrienne, Camilla's wedding is the most important day of her life. You will be there. If you fail to show, you will be cut off completely. No more financial support, no more family. Consider this your last and only warning. Gregory Keller. I set the phone down slowly, my fingers trembling as they brushed against the edge of a leather-bound folder sitting neglected on my desk. It was my MIT diploma, a symbol of achievement that had long been hidden away, tucked beneath a pile of unopened bills and forgotten paperwork. The gold-embossed letters gleamed faintly in the waning afternoon light. Adrienne Brooke Keller, Bachelor of Science in Computer Science, magna cum laude. It was an accolade I had earned through years of sweat and sacrifice, yet I had never dared to display it, not because I lacked pride, but because no one else ever showed any. Sinking into the chair, I closed my eyes and let memories flood back. Sharp, bittersweet, impossible to silence. I was 8 years old when I ran into the kitchen, clutching a report card dotted with straight A's, hoping for a moment of recognition. Mom glanced up briefly, her attention already absorbed by her phone, barely acknowledging me with a distracted, "That's nice, honey." That very same evening, the living room exploded with cheers and applause, not for me, but for Camilla, who had won a local beauty pageant and received a family vacation as a reward. I sat on the stairs, invisible and small, the math trophy I'd won resting alone on my bedroom shelf as if it had no worth. Fast forward to my senior year of high school, when I held in my hands the letter from MIT granting me a full scholarship. My heart pounded with hope and fear as I presented it to my parents. Mom's face tightened, concern flickering in her eyes. "Boston's so far away. Camilla might feel left behind," she murmured. Dad didn't look up from his newspaper. "You're staying local," he declared. "That's final." I nodded in silence, swallowing the sting of their decision. And 2 weeks later, I was on a Greyhound bus, 2 suitcases in tow, and a forged dorm registration tucked carefully in my jacket pocket. I left behind everything I knew: family, hometown, and a life that never saw me. In Seattle, I built something new: a life of independence, success, and quiet resilience. As I glanced back at the calendar on my desk, the dates for Camilla's wedding week glared at me in a circle of angry red ink. 14 days of rehearsals, photo shoots, brunches, and parties, all for the golden child I was told to celebrate. I opened my banking app, the balance shining bright and reassuring. $120,017. Enough. I didn't need their help anymore. They just didn't know that yet. I stood and walked to the window, the Seattle skyline glittering beneath the warm afternoon sun like a promise I was ready to claim. I whispered to the woman staring back at me in the mirror, the woman who had fought tooth and nail to be seen and heard. It's time they finally see who I've become. The moment I stepped off the plane, the heavy Texas heat enveloped me like an unwelcome reminder of the life I had tried so hard to escape. The humid air clung to my skin as I made my way through the crowded airport, the cacophony of voices and rolling suitcases a sharp contrast to the quiet sanctuary I had built thousands of miles away in Seattle. Yet here I was, back where it all began, facing the ghosts I thought I had left behind. Driving the familiar route from the airport, every mile felt like a journey through memories. The gas station where I used to buy sodas with loose change. The faded strip mall where I crammed for exams while Camilla had her nails done. The cracked sidewalks and peeling paint of neighborhoods I had long outgrown, but which still held pieces of my childhood, fragments I couldn't quite leave behind. As I turned onto our quiet cul-de-sac, the house came into view, standing tall and imposing, just as I remembered. Yet today it was dressed for celebration, adorned with delicate ivory tulle draped elegantly across the porch railings and surrounded by rows of pristine white chairs stacked neatly along the driveway, ready to welcome 100 guests. It looked less like a home and more like a scene from a bridal magazine, a perfect facade for a day I wasn't sure I belonged to anymore. I barely had time to catch my breath before the door swung open, revealing my mother. Her arms were outstretched, but the embrace she offered felt rehearsed, more obligation than affection. Her honey blonde hair was flawless, every strand in place, her makeup carefully applied as if to mask years of strain. She smiled, a tight, polite curl of the lips that didn't reach her eyes. "Adrian," she said softly, the word hanging between us with a mixture of relief and tension. "We're glad you came." Her voice wavered, betraying the facade of calm she desperately tried to maintain. "Camilla's been overwhelmed." Stepping inside was like entering another world. The house was filled with the scent of vanilla candles and freshly painted walls, but the atmosphere was thick with a different kind of tension, one I hadn't noticed from a distance. Everywhere I looked, piles of invitations, floral arrangements, and gift bags seemed to spill out of every corner, turning the space into a sprawling battlefield for wedding preparations. Before I could process more, my father appeared, his reading glasses perched on the bridge of his nose, his expression unreadable as he surveyed the room. There was no warmth in his greeting, only a curt nod. "Good. You're here?" His voice was steady but cold, carrying the weight of unspoken expectations. Without hesitation, he handed me a clipboard marked "Guest Welcome Bags." "Camilla wants the lavender tissue paper folded diagonally," he said, his eyes not meeting mine. "The ceremony programs need to be sorted and ready by 4. "I just walked in the door," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady despite the growing knot of frustration twisting in my stomach. "And now you have something useful to do," Dad said flatly before turning away. Just then, the queen of the house herself descended the staircase. Camilla entered the room with a confident stride, every inch the radiant bride-to-be. Her curls bounced perfectly as if choreographed by the best stylist in town, and her white romper shimmered in the soft light, tailored to highlight her every curve with effortless grace. Her phone was pressed to her ear, her voice sharp and commanding as she barked orders at the florist over a crackling line. "No, I said dusty mauve, not blush. If you ruin the arrangements, I will find someone who can fix this. Do you understand me?" She caught sight of me and gave a dismissive air kiss, one cheek, no contact, before returning her attention to the florist as if I were nothing more than a fleeting inconvenience. "Thank God you're here," she sighed dramatically once she finally ended the call, exhaustion and irritation mingling in her voice. "Mom can't tell the difference between lavender and lilac, and Dad's been obsessed with napkin folds all morning. I need someone who's sane." She didn't ask how I was. She didn't say welcome home. I set my bag down, fighting back a surge of bitterness. "I haven't even unpacked yet," I said quietly. Camilla waved me off like a child who'd been told to get to work. "You'll feel better once you're helping. Also, Dorian's planning a surprise for the reception. It needs to coordinate perfectly with the centerpieces, so no neutrals." I forced a smile, masking the wariness blooming in my chest. "Dorian?" "My fiancé," Camilla beamed, the word dripping with pride and finality. "He's a financial consultant with government connections. You'll meet him at dinner." Mom chimed in, her voice laced with the same pride that once celebrated Camilla's every achievement. "You'll see, Adrienne. He's remarkable." The doorbell rang promptly at 6:30, and in he strode. Dorian Vance. Tall, impeccably dressed, with a smile so polished it seemed manufactured rather than genuine. His eyes, however, held a glint of something carefully concealed, a guardedness beneath the charm. He shook my hand firmly. "Adrienne," he said smoothly, "Cammy has told me all about you. The brilliant recluse from Seattle, with a mind for cybersecurity." "Cybersecurity consultant," I corrected, measuring his gaze. "Sounds intense," he replied with a wink. I'm involved with some friends developing revolutionary AI crypto platforms. Maybe we can talk shop sometime. Throughout dinner, Dorian commanded the room, weaving tales of private investments, political connections, and cutting edge technology. Dad hung on his every word, dazzled by the narrative, while I quietly studied the man in front of me, searching for cracks beneath the surface polish. When a lull in the conversation came, I seized the moment. Which exchanges do you primarily trade on? I asked, voice calm but probing. Dorian faltered, eyes flickering briefly. Mostly private, invite-only platforms, decentralized networks with partners in Zurich and Singapore. And your company is registered where? I pressed. Offshore. Cayman adjacent. He replied smoothly. It's the beauty of blockchain. Borderless and border-free. Dad shot me a warning glance, but I only nodded slowly. Dorian raised his glass. To family, he toasted. Everyone else clinked their glasses. I didn't. Because while they celebrated, I was already planning my next move. That night, the house was draped in silence, but my mind was anything but quiet. The guest room, once my sanctuary, now transformed into a shrine for Camilla's big day, felt strange and unfamiliar. The walls were adorned with soft pinks and golds, and every surface was cluttered with framed engagement photos, glossy and perfect, frozen moments of a future that seemed to belong to someone else. I sat on the edge of the bed, my laptop perched precariously on my knees. The glow of the screen illuminated my determined face as I began piecing together the fragments of a puzzle that suddenly seemed far more sinister than mere family drama, starting with what I knew, or thought I did, Dorian Vance. The polished fiancé with a charm too practiced, a smile too smooth. Yet the man who had captivated my family, weaving a story of power, wealth, and influence with such ease that even my father was hooked. I searched for him online, but found barely a trace. No LinkedIn profile that could confirm his credentials. No corporate filings. No proof of his investment firm, Avanta Ledger Group, beyond a shadowy website with vague claims and no verifiable details. A chill ran down my spine as memories of a forensic investigation I once studied came rushing back. The name Avanta Ledger had surfaced before, in a case involving a sophisticated crypto scam that left a family destitute. Digging deeper, I unearthed a series of aliases linked to the man who called himself Dorian. Jason Lennox, a Boston-based man who vanished days before his wedding, absconding with $80,000 and a priceless family heirloom. The police reports detailed a pattern of deceit, but no charges stuck. Elliot Vaughn, a man with a different name but the same face, who left another fiancé in ruins across the country. 3 names, 3 brides betrayed, 1 calculating con artist. I printed every shred of evidence, photos, police statements, bank transfers, and spread them across the bed like pieces of a crime scene. The pattern was unmistakable. With only 4 days before Camilla's wedding, time was running out. I reached out to Julia Nguyen, the Boston victim, who responded within minutes, her voice a tremor of shared pain and anger. He told us he was involved in private wealth strategy, she said over the phone, her words raw and heavy. Got my parents to refinance their home, then disappeared, leaving us with nothing but shattered trust. Her emails flooded my inbox. Police reports, transaction histories, photographs, each one a nail in the coffin of Dorian's fabricated identity. I leaned back, heart pounding, mind racing. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a ticking time bomb. And the woman I loved as a sister was walking right into it. The weight of the evidence lay heavy on my shoulders as I closed my laptop that night, the glow from the screen fading but the urgency burning brighter than ever. I couldn't shake the feeling that the clock was ticking, that Camilla's wedding was more than just a celebration. It was a trap set by a man whose lies had already destroyed others' lives. My skills in cybersecurity had brought me this far. Now, they were the only weapons I had left to protect my sister from a devastating betrayal. I spent the next hours in the quiet of my childhood bedroom, now a war room strewn with printed documents and notes, methodically combing through every digital trace Dorian left behind. His web of deceit was intricate, a tangled maze of false identities, offshore accounts, and shell companies designed to confuse and obscure. Every name he used, every company he claimed to own dissolved under the weight of my scrutiny. Hours later, I uncovered a crucial lead. An archived police report from Boston, filed under the name Jason Lennox, a man whose description was eerily familiar. I cross-referenced the photographs attached with the images I'd gathered of Dorian Vance, and the match was unmistakable. My fingers trembled as I typed an email to Julia Nguyen, the woman I had spoken to earlier. I needed her cooperation to unravel the full extent of the scheme. Julia's reply was swift and heart-wrenching. "I've been through hell because of him," she wrote. "He took my family's savings, my mother's heirloom ring, and left us with nothing but debt and heartbreak. Please don't let my story happen again." She forwarded to me photographs of her wedding preparations, her family's frantic calls to banks, and letters from lawyers trying to track down a man who seemed to vanish like smoke at the moment of truth. The more I learned, the clearer the pattern became. Dorian, or rather Jason, or Elliot, he was a con artist who preyed on families desperate to believe in their own fairy tale, lulling them with promises of security and prestige only to disappear with their life savings before the altar. My heart ached for Camilla, so blind to the web of lies spun around her, so eager to embrace a future built on sand. But I couldn't act alone. I reached out to trusted contacts in law enforcement and cybersecurity, sharing what I had uncovered. Together, we traced recent wire transfers, cross-checked international bank accounts, and mapped the digital footprints that Jason had carelessly left behind. The reality was brutal. The wedding was just 4 days away, and Dorian was already siphoning off funds, draining the very lifeblood of our family's finances. Each discovery was a knife twist to the heart, but I refused to back down. I printed out a thick stack of evidence, reports, emails, photographs, bank statements, and readied myself to confront a family blinded by hope and denial. I wasn't just fighting for truth anymore. I was fighting for my sister's future, for the family I'd longed to be part of, for the chance to finally be seen. The sun filtered through the tall windows of the Keller living room as I spread the evidence before them, pages upon pages of damning proof that shattered the illusion they clung to. Bank statements, police reports, photographs, wire transfers, and Julia Nguyen's affidavit, all laid out like a tapestry unraveling thread by thread. My father was the first to enter, his sharp eyes narrowing as they swept across the chaotic display. The rigid lines of his mouth tightened as he looked up at me. "What is all this?" he demanded, voice low but tinged with disbelief. "I need all of you, Dad, Mom, Camilla, and Dorian, to sit down." "This is not a request," I said, my voice steady but heavy with urgency. Mom appeared moments later, her hands trembling as she set down a stack of wedding invitations she'd been obsessively organizing. Camilla followed, her bright facade dimming when she took in the mountain of evidence on the table. Dorian remained silent, leaning against the mantel, his practiced smile faltering only for the briefest of moments. I looked at each of them, locking eyes with my sister first. "This man is a fraud," I said, voice unyielding. "His real name is Jason Lennox. Before that, Elliot Vaughn. Before that, Dorian Vance." I held up a photo collage, a side-by-side of the same face under different names, each as charming and deceptive as the last. He's disappeared with the money of 3 different brides, all within days before their weddings. Julia Nguyen is one of his victims. She lost her inheritance and her grandmother's ring. My father's jaw clenched, his face reddening with anger. "This is absurd." "I have done the research. The transfers, the shell companies, the police reports, it all points to the same man," I insisted. Tears welled in Camilla's eyes as she whispered, "You went digging through his past?" "Yes," I answered softly, "because I'm trying to protect you." "No," she snapped, voice shaking. "You're trying to ruin my wedding." My mother stepped forward, her voice strained with exhaustion. "Adrian, even if there are questions, people grow and change. Dorian is not the man you think." I met her gaze steadily. "You wired him a second mortgage on the house? $250,000. Where is that money now?" A gasp escaped her lips. Dad's eyes widened. "You invaded my office?" I found the truth. That's what matters. My words hung in the air like a verdict. Dorian finally spoke, his tone smooth but with an edge of defensiveness. "You don't understand the complexities of crypto investments and private wealth. This isn't a scam. It's innovation." I stepped forward, voice cold and certain. It's theft, and you've been conning all of us. The room fell into an uneasy silence. Dad's face turned a deeper shade of red. You don't understand business at my level. It's called fraud, I said simply. Camilla's voice broke as she accused, You're jealous because you were never chosen first. I shook my head. I'm here because I care, because I won't let you be the next victim. But the damage was done. The trust was shattered. Feeling the walls closing in, I gathered the scattered documents and walked toward the door. The weight of their disbelief was suffocating, but I refused to crumble. As I left, I whispered under my breath, I won't stop fighting. Not for me, and not for her. 2 days had passed since the confrontation, yet the weight of that day still pressed heavily against my chest like an unrelenting storm. I had hoped, foolishly perhaps, that the truth would shatter the illusions and save my sister before it was too late. But reality often plays a cruel hand. The first call came early in the morning, piercing the stillness of my Seattle apartment with an urgency I couldn't ignore. It was Dad. His voice cracked, raw with panic. Adrian, he's gone. Dorian. He disappeared overnight. The house is empty. His phone is off. The money, everything, is gone. A cold numbness settled over me as I processed his words. The calm, calculated man I had warned them about had vanished, taking with him not just the wedding funds, but the second mortgage they'd taken out under his persuasion, and even Mom's retirement savings. The next calls flooded in, Mom pleading, Camilla sobbing, each desperate for help they had denied me just days before. My phone vibrated relentlessly, an incessant reminder that they needed me now. I sat motionless, the phone screen's harsh glow illuminating the raw fear and regret in their voices. But beneath the shock, a familiar voice echoed in my mind. Vivian, my mentor and the one who had taught me to set boundaries when love and loyalty threatened to consume you. Boundaries aren't betrayal, she had said during one of our sessions. They're protection. They keep you whole when others demand your pieces. I had carried those words like a shield, and now, faced with my family's collapse, they felt truer than ever. I didn't answer their calls immediately. Instead, I retreated into the quiet solitude of my apartment, reflecting on everything: the past, the lies, the pain, and the fight ahead. When I finally picked up the phone, it was not out of obligation, but choice. I listened as Dad's voice broke down completely, his pride shattered by the ruin Dorian had wrought. We didn't listen, Mom whispered, tears thick in her voice. Please, Adrian, please come home. Camilla's text glowed on the screen later that day, simple but desperate. You were right. I didn't listen. Please help us. Packing my bag, I didn't feel the familiar pang of resentment. Instead, a quiet resolve settled over me. This time, I wasn't coming home to beg for acceptance or to reclaim a lost place in their lives. I was coming home to take control. I booked my flight back to Texas, not as the invisible daughter, but as the woman who knew her worth, who carried the truth like armor. The rental car crunched over familiar gravel as I pulled into the driveway. The wedding tent stood half dismantled, the white chairs stacked against the fence, and the once vibrant flower arrangements were wilting, symbols of a celebration that had turned into a disaster. Mom opened the door before I could knock, her makeup gone, her face etched with exhaustion and worry. In 2 days, she said softly, you came back. Her arms hesitated in the air, unsure if I wanted comfort. Inside, Dad paced the living room, phone pressed tightly to his ear, eyes darting around like a man drowning in his own mistakes. He hung up when he saw me, his gaze flicking to my designer handbag and the watch on my wrist, a silent reminder that I was no longer the child they had ignored. We thought maybe you could help, he began, voice strained. Financially, until we figure this out. Mom wrung her hands nervously. The Hendersons are asking questions. The country club board. Your father is still treasurer. It's complicated. Camilla sat curled on the couch, wearing one of my old high school t-shirts, her eyes swollen from crying. If you had been more supportive from the beginning, she said quietly, maybe I would have listened. I set my bag down and slowly unbuttoned my coat, the weight of years pressing down on me. The walls still bore her trophies, her photos, the accolades I had never received. I can help, I said, voice steady but firm. I can assist with filing police reports, connect you with lawyers who specialize in fraud and manage the mortgage payments directly. Their faces softened for a moment. But, I added, I will not empty my savings or co-sign loans. I will not sacrifice my financial security for mistakes I warned you about. Silence. Dad's face flushed red. This family has supported you your whole life. I let out a bitter laugh. A roof over my head and food on the table. That's the legal minimum, Dad. Everything else I earned. Camilla uncrossed her arms, frustration and exhaustion mingling in her voice. So you're just going to abandon us now? I met her gaze evenly. It's not abandonment. It's self-respect. I exhaled slowly. You need me now because you're desperate, but you never wanted me. Mom sank into a chair, voice breaking. How can you be so cold? I shrugged, the truth slipping out before I could stop it. I learned from the experts. For the first time, they truly saw me. Not the daughter who disappeared, but the woman who had built herself without their notice. I pulled out the legal documents my lawyer prepared. Contracts outlining the terms of my help, including a formal acknowledgement of emotional neglect and favoritism. Their faces went pale. We would never sign that, Mom gasped. Then I leave, I said calmly. And you explained at the bank why the mortgage won't be paid next month. Dad reached for his glasses with trembling hands. 10 minutes later, all 3 signatures were on the page. I called my financial advisor. Proceed with Plan A, I said. Transfer funds directly. No exceptions. Turning to them, I said, from now on, you deal with Rachel, not me. No hugs, no promises, just the quiet power of truth. I buttoned my coat, walked to the door, and stepped outside. Not the invisible daughter anymore, but the woman they never saw coming. Returning to the house felt different this time. Not like the hesitant, reluctant arrival of a child seeking acceptance, but as a woman who carried the weight of hard-earned truth. The air was thick with tension, and I knew every step I took would either cement the fragile truce or shatter it completely. I entered the living room with my lawyer's documents clutched tightly in my hands, the paper crisp and formal, a stark contrast to the chaos of emotions swirling around us. My parents and Camilla were there, faces pale, eyes wary, a mix of relief and resentment lurking just beneath the surface. I've come with terms, I said, my voice steady and clear, leaving no room for negotiation. Dad cleared his throat, trying to regain control. Adrian, this family has weathered storms before. We can work through this. No, I interrupted gently but firmly. This isn't about storms, it's about boundaries, about respect, and about truth. I placed the documents on the coffee table, contracts outlining the conditions of my assistance. I will pay the mortgage directly to the bank. I will help file police reports and connect you with legal counsel specializing in financial fraud. But this help comes with clear boundaries. No more lies, no more manipulation, and absolutely no cover-ups or fake stories to protect reputations. Mom's eyes widened in shock as she scanned the pages. Furthermore, I continued, there is a formal acknowledgement in this document that for years, favoritism and emotional neglect created an environment that left me invisible. This acknowledgement is not a punishment. It's an honest reckoning with the past. A heavy silence filled the room. Dad's face flushed, his jaw clenched tightly. We would never sign such a thing, Mom said, voice trembling. Then I will leave, I said calmly, folding my arms. And you can explain to the bank why the payments won't be made next month. The room seemed to hold its breath. Minutes dragged on as the weight of the moment pressed down on us all. Finally, with a shaky hand, Dad picked up a pen. One by one, my mother and Camilla followed suit, their signatures marking not just the papers, but a turning point in our fractured family. I breathed a quiet sigh of relief, knowing this was only the beginning of a long road ahead. I've arranged for Rachel Winters, a certified financial advisor, to handle all transactions and communications from this point forward, I said, locking eyes with each of them. You will not contact me directly regarding the finances. This is not negotiable. Dad opened his mouth, but the certainty in my tone stopped him. This isn't charity. I said, voice firm. This is a business transaction to protect all of us. My mother's eyes filled with tears, but there was a glimmer of understanding there. As I gathered my things to leave, Aunt Helen appeared at the door. "You'll be all right," she said softly. I nodded, stepping into the sunlight filtering through the porch. The street where I once waited for the school bus now felt like the threshold to a new chapter, one where I would no longer shrink to fit the expectations of others. As I walked away from the house, my steps were measured and strong, echoing the resolve I had nurtured over years of silence and struggle. I wasn't just walking away from a broken past. I was stepping toward a future built on truth, respect, and boundaries that would finally let me thrive. 1 year later, the apartment in Seattle had been traded for a cozy craftsman bungalow nestled in a quiet neighborhood. The walls were lined with bookshelves, plants thrived in every corner, and sunlight spilled through the large windows, casting warm patterns across the maple floors. The diploma I once hid away hung proudly on the wall, framed and centered. No longer a secret, but a testament to the woman I had become. In the backyard garden, tomato seedlings stretched toward the sun, their green leaves glossy and strong. Alongside them grew peppers, zucchini, and herbs, each nurtured with patience and care. The garden was more than a hobby. It was a metaphor for my life. Like these plants, I had been pruned, cut back, and left to root again in fresh soil. And now, I was thriving. Inside, my nonprofit organization was buzzing with energy. I had founded a mentorship program for young women in STEM fields, especially those from families marked by emotional neglect and hardship. These were brilliant, driven girls like Jessa, a 17-year-old with a fierce determination that reminded me of my younger self. Just yesterday, she had shared the news of a scholarship interview she had landed, her voice bright with hope and nerves. "You helped me prepare," she said, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. When they asked why I deserved it more than others, I didn't apologize or downplay myself. I told them exactly what I was capable of. And now, I have a chance. Her smile broke wide, lighting up the room. I leaned forward, my heart swelling with pride. "You earned it, Jessa. Never forget that." After our meeting, I stepped outside to water the garden. The air was fresh, the scent of earth rich and alive. As I tended to the young plants, I reflected on how far I had come. From the invisible daughter in a house full of empty chairs to a woman building a legacy of her own. My phone chimed, pulling me back inside. It was an email from Camilla. The subject line read simply, "I'm sorry." I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a heartfelt message. "Adrian, I'm in therapy now. I'm starting to understand things I couldn't before. I'm sorry for how I treated you and for everything we lost. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave up on myself." I read the words twice, a gentle smile tugging at my lips. Not for validation, but for closure. I folded my laptop shut and walked back into the garden, the evening sun softening the edges of the day. The rosebush I had pruned harshly last fall was now bursting with new growth, vibrant and unyielding. Some things grow stronger when cut back. Some roots stretch deeper in fresh soil. And some wounds, when met with truth and boundaries, heal in ways that let you finally blossom. I touched the stem gently and whispered to the fading light, "I am visible now.